I have started the
Hello.
recording.
Yeah. Good morning to all. A warm welcome to all participants. I would like to welcome today's speaker, the epicenter of this distinguished talk in automation in electronics engineering, Mr. Ramachandra Gambhir. It's a pleasure to have you here, sir, on this talk. I would now request Ashwini Holla, Vice Chair of IEEE Mangalore section, to welcome and introduce today's speaker.
Good morning, everybody. A warm welcome to everyone on the occasion of National Science Day 2021. I find it a pleasure to introduce to all of you a very distinguished guest in Professor Dr. Ramachandra Gambhir. Apologies, just give me a minute, please. Yes, Dr. Gambhir, a member of IEEE Santa Clara Valley Section, Region 6, Western USA, is having around 3 decades of professional experience with 10 years teaching at KREC NITK Surathkal and 20 years in industry, including his startup that he held for years. His undergraduation was in electronics and communication and is an alumnus of NITK, the erstwhile Karnataka Engineering College at Surathkal from the Industrial Electronics program. His research area includes IoT and wearable cameras with high-speed streaming video, and Sir has delivered several special lectures and published papers in this area. Dr. Ram has received several honors and awards throughout his career. Notable is the IEEE International Award in VLSI 99 for the FPGA-based design done for ISRO. He recently co-authored a textbook on IoT that is being published by McGraw-Hill. Currently, he is a senior leader, business and technical operations at Cisco Systems Incorporated at San Jose, California, USA. A very warm welcome to all of you again. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, Ashwini, madam, for the introduction. I think now I request the speaker of today's program, Mr. Ramachandra Gambhir, to take over and deliver the distinguished talk.
Thanks, Dr. Sivareddy. Thanks, Ashwini, for the nice introduction. And it is my pleasure to share a few thoughts which I have learned over the years with the participants who are on this bridge right now. And I have done my best to put out some ideas on the slides. And I have kept in mind that basically I'm addressing the sophomores and the juniors who have just entered engineering. So those who are experienced, if you find it very boring and not interested, kindly bear with this. But I will try my level best to cover as interestingly as possible. And also I'll try my level best to keep you all awake. Of course, it's a daytime for you. I'm speaking to you at 16,000 kilometers away on the other side of the globe. I'm in San Jose, California, close to San Francisco. And the time right now is Saturday morning, 9/7. For you, it is Sunday morning, 10:30, 10:32, I think. No, 10.
Yes.
It is 10:37. 10:37. So I'm 13 and a half hours behind you. So this is one of the classic examples of automation, why we are able to do this call today. I will go through the details when we talk about network automation. So basically, I have want to have one disclaimer before I start. Of course, now if you Google for the information, anything and everything is available on the internet. So many a times we take the pictures, we take the information, but we will not be knowing who is the exact author who did that. So I just want to be cautious and say that yes, I too also have taken some figures from the internet. So those figures belong to the respective authors who created that, and I thank them for allowing me to use here. And all the credit and copyright goes to them, and I do not own that. So this is the agenda that I wanted to talk about today. If you have any question, you please unmute yourself and you can ask me, or you can wait for the question and answer session towards the end. But if you cannot wait, if you feel, you please feel free to interrupt me. And again, I do not guarantee that I will answer everything that you ask, because I have a limited knowledge in the field. Because what is knowledge is like an ocean, and what I know is a drop. So if I know something, I will answer. Otherwise, I will get back to you over email. And I thought I would slightly change the agenda this time, not like a conventional lecture where we start with defining what we are talking about, then tell how the whole thing works, and then go for examples and use cases applications. I am going in bottom-down approach. First, I'm going to talk about use cases, applications of automation. Then that would give us an enough motivation of what automation is. And then we will quickly see, having understood the use cases and applications, we will quickly see what exactly automation is and what do you mean by design for automation and what tools that we need to know. And then we will see what is that we need to study in engineering in order to pick up automation as one of your future study areas, or if you want to do some research in automation, because automation is the future now. So let me start with use cases and applications. And I would like to cover these use cases and applications. Initially, I will talk about home automation, because majority of us are already aware of home automation. Maybe some of us are already using home automation in our home. So I will talk about home automation, show you some areas which can be automated, and I will also talk about how we can automate those things. Then I'll briefly touch upon electronic design automation, electronics manufacturing automation, and automation in medical electronics. Then I will talk about network automation, which is the very key in today's world, because we are all in very bad pandemic situation, and the majority of us are working from home, and we have been working from home over the year close to now. Because of network automation, we could do that. So I will go into the details. Then I'll talk about software automation and what tools that we need to know to do the software automation. And if you feel I have not covered any other area that interests you, you can email to me and I will send you material, or I will send you whatever study that I did in that area. So let me first go to home automation. And another point I would just like to tell you, I have done the mute on entry. So by default, you will be muted. So if you want to ask a question, you need to unmute and then ask. I also request everyone to stay on mute so that we do not disturb others. Okay, the photograph what I am showing you is a classic example of home automation. This is my own home back in India, in Udupi in Karnataka, which I control from San Jose in California, sitting 16,000 miles away. And if you see this, I have taken this picture. I think somebody is causing echo. Hey, can you kindly mute yourself? Let's see who is that. Are my voice clear?
Anshuman Mani Tripathi, please mute. You're now okay.
Right, thanks. So, folks, kindly keep muted, otherwise it will cause disturbance. Okay, so talking about home automation, this is my own home back in Udupi in Karnataka in India, and majority things there I will basically control from here using just by clicking something on my mobile phone. So this is evening 5:44 p.m. You can see the timestamp there. Once it is a little dark, I have taken another picture at exactly 6:44 or 6:38. So if you see this, the lights are turned on at the gate. It is the same picture, but with the lights turned on. This is fully automated at that home. Nobody will turn on the switch. Nobody will turn off the switch. It is completely auto-controlled. Home automation is done by using a simple relay circuit. See, relay is a basic switch for any electronics guy. The relay is nothing but it will have a just two terminals called as normally open and normally closed, and there is a common terminal, and there will be a coil to energize. Once the coil is energized, if the relay position is in normally open, it will go to close, otherwise vice versa. All you have to do is put a photo sensor in series with the normally open relay and connect it to 230 volts. Other side, you connect it to your lights. You are done. Light automation is done. And if whatever is connected to the 230 volts, if you put a small IoT switch there, which controls through the SIM card, then you can actually, wherever sitting in the world, send a message to turn on that. You can build your own home automation just by using a simple relay circuit, a photodiode, and a small SIM card based circuit, which is available in the market for 200 rupees. Altogether for 500 rupees, you can do the light automation in your home. You can do it right today after my lecture. It is so easy to do that. And what you see here is basically I have 8 cameras installed at home, and all 8 of them I keep monitoring and controlling from Chanoje here. So what can we do in the home automation? Sky is the limit. You can do any kind of automation you want at home. You can have a security camera. Another thing that you can implement is the face recognition algorithms are very widely available now, commercial algorithms. And face recognition circuit is available. What you could do is keep this face recognition software loaded into a small system and keep all the known person's face who normally come to home in that. Whenever any new person comes in front of the house, automatically you will get a message to your mobile that there is an intruder or there is a guest or there is a new person at the home. You can immediately turn on the speaker and ask him or her what is that he wanted. Or you can alert somebody at home saying, hey, somebody has come, check. It doesn't matter which part of the world you are sitting. That can be done using these home automation devices, which is nothing but a simple IoT. IoT is nothing but Internet of Things, as you know, which basically contains an input sensor, output actuator. And this is called as an IoT cell. This IoT cell can be used to automate any part of the home. All you need is a sensor to derive the data from that, and an actuator to turn on and take an action. And then you can have a optionally a memory and CPU if you want to do some kind of processing. Like what I said, if you want a face recognition to be put on, you can do that. Sky is the limit. Whatever you think of in your mind, you can automate that. And you can do that right immediately with the knowledge that we have already. It doesn't need any special skills. And these are some smart home ideas. You can have automatic lights, which I've shown you live. And then you can have automatic door locks. In fact, you can have even a message sent to your mobile, text message, when somebody opens the lock or close the lock. This can be used for commercial buildings such as shops, so that the shop owner knows when the shop is opened in wrong time. Similarly, we can have smart security camera. One of the smart security camera application is, let us say, in the bigger malls and shops, the biggest threat that they encounter is an intruder who comes in and who will steal something. There are other kind of burglars. This I've seen in bigger malls here like Walmart. What they do is they come inside, they don't steal anything, they don't take away anything. Maybe pick up a chips packet, Lay's chips packet, go around within the shop but eat it and throw it in the dustbin. Eat 2-3 chips packet and spend some 20 minutes in the shop as if you're doing some shopping, but walk away. Nobody can recognize that he actually ate away 2-3 packets of chips or biscuits or whatever it is. Unless you see him live, how do you catch him? So one way to do that is, once you have identified once that a person is a possible burglar, what you can do is have the camera at the entrance of the shop and have the database of a possible suspects. And whenever a person enters, the system will keep comparing whether he is a possible suspect. If yes, an alert message will go to security saying that, hey, you have a visitor who is a possible threat to the shop. So keep an eye on him. Then they will go and catch him. The same thing can be done to jewelry shops. Same thing can be done to any shop. This application can be used anywhere. In fact, now some airlines, they use face recognition security camera to welcome their business class customers. You don't need to check in
Hi,
anything.
Ramchandra. Hi, Ramchandra.
Yes, Vijay.
Hi, Ramchandra.
Yeah, tell me.
This is Dodmani.
Yeah, that money. Tell
We
me.
can also use video analytics to catch hold of the guys who are actually munching the food, right? I mean, that's another area where we could use that, right?
Yeah, video analytics could be used. What I'm saying is, even to do the video analytics is a reactive thing. This is a proactive thing. I want to catch him or be alert as soon as he enters. But to arrive at that, I need to do video analytics.
No, but Ramchandra, see, when I walk in the first time, you wouldn't know who I am, whether I'm a possible suspect. Only after there is some database saying that, okay, so Mr. X comes and 1 or 2 times, once I've been caught in video analytics, munching food. So next time my face can go into the database. Only next time I'll be a possible suspect, not the first time. First time I'm innocent, like anybody else who would walk into the store, right?
Yeah. So there, what we use is, it's a very good question. So what we use is, for example, this is also used by customs people. if you had done international travel, while returning back to home country, there are two channels,
Mhm.
green channel and red channel. So where
Yes.
you declare something, you walk into the red channel. If you don't have anything to declare, you walk to the green channel. But sometimes what will happen, maybe a passenger X is carrying something which he doesn't want to declare, but he's walking through the green channel. We can do what is known as facial recognition here to know whether, because if you look at any human being, the face is index of mind. If at all he is bit of
Yep.
scared or bit of concerned that would somebody see him, his face feelings are different. You can actually use video analytics to analyze that. Even if a person is walking through the green channel, you can say it's a possible suspect.
Yeah.
You can catch him.
Yep.
The same thing could be done here.
Yep.
So as you rightly said, video analytics are used to create the database.
Yes. True.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I come from video analytics and home automation and basically automation background.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
So the smart security camera like this, we can give n number of applications. In fact, one of the application I have done is to identify if there is, let us say, something kept in the airport or bus stand or railway station, a bag is kept for some time, which is not moved more than 30 minutes. Somebody kept away bag and went. You know what I'm saying about, I don't want to explain here. So automatically the camera will detect that and then it will send an alert to the security. Let it be false alarm. Maybe after 30 minutes, somebody comes and takes away the bag. But if at all it was a big suspect, then that would be caught even before something happens. So the sky is the limit. They think of it, you can implement it. Because now we
Sir,
have
one thing I want to say. Is there possible that if you can use thermal screening, because if a person wants to be a possible suspect, sometimes what happened is in airports basically, some airports will implement thermal screening. So if in the point of custom area, like if a person who doesn't want to declare any items, the facial temperature changes. So that can also be a option instead of doing video analytics and the other one which you have told us about the database thing. There is also one more active way of catching that person, right? Like I guess in Heathrow or in some other place they always use thermal screening. I guess thermal checkup. I think they're continuously monitoring the passengers passing through the custom gates.
at the thermal screening, I am not very sure whether it can it can do the face recognition. But thermal screening is more of trying to know the temperature of a person, trying to know
Yeah,
the body
exactly.
temperature.
Because if you see, if you're hiding something,
No, you're right.
sometimes-
No,
yeah,
thermal doesn't support facial recognition.
yeah, but
Thermal doesn't support facial recognition.
I think we can have question
It
and answer
only,
session at the end.
recognize-
Yeah, we can argue that. We can argue on that. Maybe we can take it up offline. At the interest of the time, maybe I agree with you already that we'll just move forward. Towards the
Yeah.
end, if we have some time, we can discuss on that.
sure, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Then we can have automatic blinds that you can control. This is right. You don't even need to manually control anything. So you can connect it to again sensor. The sensor would automatically open and close. Similarly, automatic water filling, which is a very old technology. We don't need to explain that. And then automatic garden irrigation. This I have implemented in my Udupi home. If there are soil sensors available, what you do is have the soil sensor, which will just give you a logic 0, logic 1 output. If it is very dry, it gives you logic 1 and automatically it will relay gets energized and water tap opens. So automatically it takes water whenever it is very dry. And if it is sufficiently wet, it closes the tap. You don't need to plant the waters manually anymore. And obviously, if it rains, it doesn't turn it on. So then you can have automatic temperature control. You can do the remote control of appliances. This is quite common. You can program everything such a way that, let's say you're coming from an airport, you can program such a way that the geyser turns on after some time. If you have an electric cooker, the cooker turns on after some time, so that by the time you reach home, hot water is ready, food is ready. All these things could be done, and the sky is the limit. So let's look at electronic design automation. So this is what a quite innovative area electronic students should take up in their studies, and majority of them you would definitely read not as an optional but as a mandatory subjects. So there are software tools available to design and verify the integrated circuits. You can develop the application specific integrated circuits. I will not go into the details of the tools because the whole that itself is again a semester subject. In fact, the whole automation is a semester subject. We'll try to cover as much as possible at very high level. And if there are any questions, we'll go into the details. So the software tools are available for design and verification of integrated circuits. Similarly, in that tools, you can basically check for the timing skews. You can check for design anomalies. The thermal analysis tools are also available. You can check what is the heat dissipation that the integrated circuit will have, and because of that heat dissipation, will there be any thermal runaway? Will there be any positive feedback and thermal runaway? Would that destroy the transistor? All this analysis can be done even before you actually fabricate the integrated circuit. In fact, there are machine vision cameras available. I am very proud to say that I have designed and patented 2 machine vision cameras. One is called Lilliput, the smallest camera in the world for Japanese market. And this is 17 mm by 17 mm camera that is built along with an FPGA which holds one of the image processing algorithm, which will test the integrated circuit before it is actually fabricated. You can check whether the integrated circuit, whether there are any blobs inside, whether there are any breakouts inside, whether the bonding is okay, not okay, whether the pins are okay. All these can be tested in the integrated circuit production line while the IC is being fabricated. So, and then the printed circuit board also is completely automated using EDA tools, right from schematic capture to the Gerber generation. Basically, in the those who of you already know this, kindly excuse me. I'm telling this for the people who doesn't know about the methodology. So while fabricating the printed circuit board, initially you capture the design, whatever the paper design that you have into the computer, and then you generate a netlist. Netlist is nothing but it is a simple text file, ASCII file, which will tell the connectivity between one point to the other point in your electronic circuit. And then from the netlist, you generate what is known as a layout, where the actual components are placed and you do the connectivity between one point to the other point, one circuit to the other circuit, or one component to the other component. And once this is done, you can do the basically the something called as a signal integrity. You can check whether all the signals are properly exhibiting their wave shape, or is there any noise interference. If, for example, if you have a processor and memory connected, there are like 32 address lines, 32 data lines connected. All these lines are going one after the other with maybe 2 mm difference between each of the line. Because of that, there could be crosstalk, and if a logic 0 can become logic 1 or vice versa would lead to the data errors. So before even PCB is fabricated, you can check the signal integrity on the tool, check whether the data, you can actually check at the frequency at which you transfer the data. At the same frequency, you can check the simulation, check whether the data integrity is there, whether anything is affecting, because the length of the PCB track also plays a role, because at very high frequency, even a small length of copper would act as an antenna. So that would radiate, and the adjacent one pick up a crosstalk, and that can have a EMI interference. So all this can be tested before even you go and fabricate that. And then once you have a layout done, we generate what is known as a Gerber files. And these Gerber files are translated onto the copper clay, where it wash off the copper wherever there is no connectivity. So that would give you the printed circuit board. And then this printed circuit board then goes for inspection. This inspection is also automated. Basically, what we call it as bare board test, BBT. You actually give 230 volts voltage with some small current, check whether there are opens and shorts in the PCB. And then it goes for the assembly. Once it goes for the assembly, there also again you have the, let me see, I think I have a slide on that. Okay, so in the assembly also you have the automation. I have a separate slide which I will cover on that, because I have one topic covering the manufacturing automation. So assuming that you do the PCB manufacturing, and then once you go for a PCB assembly, you have a complete automation in PCB assembly. I am proud to say that I have worked close to 10 years in this field, where you have a pick and place machine, you have automated soldering machine, you have something called AOI, automated optical inspection. It is like a human being looking at the assembly, checking whether all the components are properly placed, whether there is any component is misplaced. See, sometimes what will happen, you have a diode. Diode will have an anode and cathode, whereas resistor can be connected in either way, but diode cannot be connected in either way. Similarly, if you take a 3-terminal transistor, you have a base emitter collector. If you reverse it, it will change. So you have to make sure that the component polarities are correct. Similarly for the capacitors. So there is one automated optical inspection which will check for all these visual faults in the PCB assembly. Then we have something called as in-circuit test. This in-circuit test checks whether the value of the component is correct or not. See, the visual inspection cannot tell you whether it is a 10 kilo ohm or 100 kilo ohm, because if you go for the surface mount devices will not have any color coding, so you will not be able to tell. So you need another test, which we call it as, we use a pogo pins, check the actual resistance value, actual capacitance value, check what is the HFE of a transistor, check whether the transistor is functional, check whether diode is functional. If there is an LED, you can also check the color of the LED, check whether the LED is properly placed. All these components can be tested using an in-circuit tester. And then not only in-circuit tester checks the component placement, component values, it will also program all the programmable devices such as FPGA, CPLDs, memories, whatever is a memory, whether it is a EEPROM, whether it is a E2PROM, whatever kind of the memory that can be tested. In fact, you can also do the memory testing. Memory testing is very important in a printed circuit board, just to make sure that no tracks are open and you are able to properly read and write to the memory location. We do what is known as walkthrough 0 and walkthrough 1. Walkthrough 0, walkthrough 1 is basically you write all the zeros in throughout the memory area. You try to read them back. You should read 0. If at all there is an error, you read 1. That means that particular line is shorted. Similarly, you write all ones. When you read back, you should read all ones. If you read 0, that means that particular track is shorted to the ground. So that is how you can anticipate, you can see whether there is any problem in the printed circuit board. And then comes a functional tester, which will check the functionality of that PCB, what it is intended to do. And then you can also do the automated packaging and then automated tracking. These are all part of the electronic manufacturing industry. which is called EMS industry. So these are some of the patented functional testers that I have designed with my hands and delivered to industry. You can see that the middle photo on the top shows where Cisco was my customer. Of course, now I'm an employee of Cisco. Earlier, Cisco was my customer, where we have done automated testing for Cisco. This is when there was a problem in one of the production line getting eye pattern for SerDes. So we had fixed that problem. And below is a very famous Microsoft product called Zune, which is similar to Apple's iPad. So I had set up 7 production lines in China, and we have done the functional testers for them. And the remaining functional testers you see in photograph, which I've done, I had when I held my own startup, where we have done several PCB functional testers for Continental Automotives, for Ford Motors. What you see on the leftmost top is the body functional unit. It is called, see, every automotive vehicle, every automobile will have an engine control unit and body control unit. So this will test the body control unit. So these are all different functional testers that I have developed and delivered, and some of them are patented. And then now we have something called IOMT, Internet of Medical Things. So Internet of Medical Things basically is the future of healthcare. And if you look at majority hospitals now, to some extent automation is included already. So I will tell you a simple use case that we have here in the United States. Suppose I want to go to a doctor. I have an app installed on my mobile. I will search the app for the doctor I want to meet, and then I will take an appointment, and then it tells me which date and time, everything. And of course, automatically it reminds me on that day and time that I have an appointment. And once I go to the clinic, I don't need to go and tell the receptionist that I have come. If the app is open, there is an automatic detection system. The monitor shows my name. Welcome, Ramchandra, it says. Be seated. We noted that you have come. We'll call you. So no need to go and tell receptionist nothing. And then also the doctor fee that you want to pay is told to you in advance, and you don't need to pay anything. It automatically deducts from your credit card. It is completely automated. And then whatever doctor gives you suggestion, advice, prescription, everything is available online. When you open your app, you can automatically see whatever doctor said during your visit is available there after your visit. And the medicine that a doctor has given, here how it works in US is you will have to identify a medical, there are chains of medical shops, like how we have big bazaars in India. There are multiple big bazaars. So there are multiple medical shop chain, like you have Apollo Pharmacy in India. Apollo Pharmacy in Bangalore is there in every single area of locality of Bangalore. So like you will tell your doctor, okay, you want to buy in Apollo. So similar to that, we tell which pharmacy I want to buy. Automatically, the prescription is emailed to them, and it is available in the cloud server, not any particular shop. You go to any shop, show your card saying that I have come to collect my medicine. Once they scan your details, it shows what medicines the doctor has given, and they will give it to you. There is a second option available. You can tell in advance to your medical shop that whatever doctor has given, please courier it to my home. So somebody will come and deliver same evening. You don't even need to go to medical shop to collect anything. That is one kind of automation done. Then for the patient monitoring, of course, there are a lot of wearable devices available today. There are two kinds of patient monitoring system. One is called reactive patient monitoring, and one is called proactive patient monitoring. First, let us look at proactive patient monitoring. Let us say there is an elder at your home who is very aged and whose vitals need to be monitored all the time. So you can have a wearable device connected, or he will wear a wearable device which will check the body temperature, which will check the pulse, which will also detect if a person falls. There is something called a fall detection wearable device. Then it will also keep checking all the parameters like what is the pulse rate, how is the heart functioning, what is the ECG of the heart. All these are constantly monitored and sent to a cloud server for for saving. And then if any anomaly is found, immediately it sends out the messages to predefined mobile numbers. It could be the immediate family members, it could be the doctor, it could be an ambulance. So automatically, whenever there is a need, the medical attention is provided as immediately as possible. This is a proactive monitoring system. In case of reactive monitoring system, the patient is already admitted to hospital, then these wearable devices keep monitoring the patient condition and alert the nurse or the doctor whenever the medical attention is required. Before even the patient calls the nurse, patient need not have to call the nurse. This monitoring system automatically takes care. For example, let us say doctor has given medicines to a patient who is already admitted into the hospital. Normal situation, what he will do, he will tell to the nurse, keep monitoring his pulse, keep monitoring his heart situation, keep monitoring maybe the blood sugar. If there are any variations in that, increase the medicine or decrease the medicine, something like that. So now with the automated system, this is automatically done, and a message goes to doctor and nurse saying that this is what the variation in patient situation. So they will come and alter the medicine. In fact, if it is a automated medicine system, that is again automatically controlled. Again, if you recollect, go back and recollect the IoT cell that I had shown you, all this automation is done with that IoT cell. You have an input sensor, you have an output actuator. That's all that can do these wonders. You basically sense and acquire the data. This is nothing but a simple data acquisition system and a decision making system. Put together becomes automation. Then in some parts of the US, now drones are used for sample collection and medicine delivery. For a routine patient, you can basically, let us say somebody need to go and get the blood test done for glucose maybe once in 15 days. So he or she need not have to go to the hospital to do that. A drone would come and then you need to give the sample, and then the drone would also come and deliver the medicine. And this could be used for varieties of applications, for delivering the routine medicine, for collecting the routine samples. But for emergency things, this may not be used. Now let us go into a very important aspect of today's session, which is network automation. So as I told you at the beginning of my lecture, somebody had joined late. I will repeat that. I am right now sitting in San Jose near San Francisco in United States, and you're all in India and Bangalore or surrounding. So I am sitting 16,000 kilometers away from you. The very fact that we are all talking to each other in a group on a conference call is the wonder of this network. That is possible because the network monitoring is automated. Otherwise, who is correcting network now? When I'm talking, you're all hearing there. Do you think that the data is moving so easily this path 16,000 kilometers? No, it is not. And there are so many errors in that, but it is getting auto corrected because automation is already implemented into this network. Let us see how it is. I am not sure whether you are aware of this website. There is something called as submarine cable website. This submarine cable website shows you what are the submarine optical cables that is there throughout the world. This is showing the live data. It is showing the submarine cable connected between the countries, between the continents, between two point-to-point communication. And the optical data is flowing through that live right now. So this is the biggest project that all the countries in the world have taken collectively to draw the submarine optical cables. That is why we are able to today transmit the data at very high speed without having any interruptions. And we are not having interruptions not because there are no interruptions, there are interruptions, but the automation is correcting that automatically. We will see how it is done. In fact, maybe I can, okay, I'll show it later, if time permits. So now we are marching towards 5G. Slowly 4G is fading away and the whole world is moving towards 5G for better internet speeds, for better quality of networking, for better automated applications. In fact, now whole world is moving towards not only smart homes, but smart cities. So many things are automated in the entire city and so many things are interconnected in the city. In fact, for example, the weather condition, the let's say you have to go and catch a flight at so and so time. And based on the weather condition, let's say the flight is delayed, your taxi to airport and you are reaching airport, everything is automatically adjusted based on that. This is one such example. In smart cities, there are a lot of IoT sensors installed to save the energy, to save the water, and also for the surveillance. In fact, face recognition is one of the best examples that is put into several cities in different parts of the country. This is to recognize any of the suspects. This is to recognize if there are any antisocial elements and alert the security. So what is network automation? Basically, network automation, what it does is it configures the networks automatically. What do you mean by configuring the network? When I establish a connectivity between one point to the other point over a network, between one node and other node, I have to configure so many things. Like I have to configure parameters such as, is it simplex, is it duplex, is it half duplex, what kind of communication it is, and what is the baud rate, what speed you are transmitting the data, and what protocol you are transmitting. All these parameters need to be configured when you set up a router or a switch. But today, the days have gone where the system administrator is sitting and setting up all those things. Most of the network routers, switches, servers, they are called zero touch provisioning equipment. You don't need to touch anything. Just power it up, connect the cable, you are done. It configures everything. That is what we call it as plug and play systems. And this zero touch provisioning systems are becoming more and more popular. And Cisco is one of the world leader in that. In fact, 70% of the world network is run by Cisco's infrastructure. And I'm proud to say I'm working in Cisco now. And not only configuring the router switches, it also manages that. Managing meaning, let us say new peer is connected, it automatically interacts with the new peer and sends the data required for that and configures the peer as well. So you can connect n number of peers to one single router based on its capacity that it is intended to take. All of them are automatically configured and managed. The management depends upon what kind of protocol you are using. Is it a broadcast? Is it a command response? What kind of the command line interfaces you need to issue? What kind of scripts that you need to run? What kind of error control coding that you're doing? All that is done automatic. So also deploying and operating of these devices done automatically. You don't need to physically manage anything. This is what Cisco conducts the test called as CCNA, Cisco Certified Network Administrator, Cisco Certified Network Professional, Cisco Certified Network Architect. So if you take up these courses run by Cisco, you can learn how to automatically configure these servers and switches. And then we are able to today very seamlessly talk on conference call using a conference bridge like this. In fact, I am very, very proud and glad to say the platform that we are all using now, which we logged in, WebEx, belongs to Cisco. It is so, you can see so stable it is, so nice it is. We are like talking to each other in one single room, but I am actually sitting 16,000 kilometers away from you in a different continent. That is happening because of high availability. The meaning of high availability is it is like a dual engine system for an aircraft. There will be actually two servers. If one goes down, before even it starts going down, other will pick up automatically without much loss in the traffic. Of course, there might be minor, very, very, very minor loss, but you will not even realize that. That is what is called as high availability. And today, these are some of the quality metrics that we use, called as high resilience, high MTTF, low MTTR, high MTBF. This high resilience is one of the most required characteristic for a network. That is possible because of automation. And that is achieved by building the fault tolerant system inside the network architecture. When you say fault tolerant system, the meaning of that fault tolerant system is you should not only detect the fault, you should also locate the fault. Not just fault detection and location, you should also correct the fault. That is what fault high resilience is. So the routers and switches, servers, they're all fault tolerant. If at all there are any cyber attacks, or if there is any network drop, if there is any packet drop, these have a built-in error control coding mechanism which will automatically detect the health of a network traffic, and whenever there is a problem, it will automatically change to different ports, change to different mission, and it will make sure that the network traffic is seamless. And unless, of course, you physically turn off the power, then nothing can be done. Other than that, as long as power is turned on, but of course, even when there is power down, if you have a backup power, the the routers will give you an alarm saying that there is a power down. It is now running on the battery. That alarm it gives, unless there is no backup power at all and it totally goes down. Other than that situation, most of the times networks today are very, very, very stable, as we see right now, how we are communicating between the continents with so many people logging into one single WebEx platform. And then for moving to 5G, Cisco has come up with a world top in the world integrated circuit called as Silicon One. This Silicon One is a very, very, very efficient silicon chip in the industry, in the entire industry. It provides twice the bandwidth of 4G, and it provides thrice the packet speed per second. And with this, we are able to break the barrier of 10 terabits per second. We're not talking about kilobits. We're not talking about megabits. We're talking about terabits, 10 terabits per second. So it has a built-in SerDes. It has built-in all the mechanism that is required to transmit and receive the data packets at 10 terabits per second. This is the one of the topmost innovation that is done at Cisco and is currently ruling the networking industry. It is breaking the barriers. It is breaking all the limitations that we had in setting up a network. And I'm very proud to say I'm working in one of those projects. And then we have software automation. In fact, in today's world, the software that you write for any application that need to be thoroughly tested before you actually put into use. And then we are in an agile world today. When I say agile world, let me share. I don't know why the sharing stopped. Okay. Shivarati, can you see my screen?
Yeah, clear. Yeah,
Okay.
your audio is clear, everything is clear. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So what I was saying, sorry, I lost my continuity. So I was saying that the software that you write today need to be thoroughly tested, and we are in the agile world today. When I say agile world, in earlier days, if you take even 10 years back, if a customer gives any order, you complete the entire product and go and deliver to him. But today's customer cannot wait long. You have to deliver them in phases. So we follow something called as agile methodology. In agile methodology, you break the entire project into potentially shippable increments called PSIs. For example, a total project of 10 months is broken into, let us say, 5 PSIs of 2 months each. So first 2 months you finish something and you deliver. And then you finish something in next 2 months and deliver. So we follow something called as a continuous integration, continuous delivery methodology. This has enhanced the software quality because if I write the entire 10,000 lines code or 20,000 lines code or 1 million lines code, go and deliver to customer, and if the customer says that, oh, this is not what I said, then imagine how much money, time that you wasted. Using this agile methodology, we will not waste time and money because every 2 months you are going and delivering something to the customer, and then in a continuous fashion. So if there is something customer says this is not what I asked, only 2 months of effort is lost, but not 10 months of effort. There are tools available for this continuous integration. One of the famous tools that industry uses is Jenkins. It is like, to give you more example to understand, let us say I am doing home automation. So I am writing some software for that. So initially, first 1 month, I can write a software only to turn on the lights and deliver it to customer. He is already using it. Then I will write another software to turn on all the taps, to turn on all the water control system, and then I will deliver it to customer again. But when I deliver this second set of software to control the water management at home, that should not spoil the light control which is already working. So we will have to make sure that the previous software still continue to work after this software is integrated with that. That is where we do something called as a unit test and integration test to make sure that as a standalone, this unit is working just to water control. Also, I integrate it with the previous software, which was delivered to customer to control the light. Now both light and water should work. So this is what is called as regression testing. I make sure that the previous software is not altered. Because of this software, some error is not introduced into that. Because when you are writing a huge software, maybe there are memory leaks. You have written a malloc function, maybe you have not freed up somewhere that might cause going to the while one loop. So these testing can be automatically done using a unit test and integration test for each functional development. And then third month, you develop one more function. Again, you make sure that the previously developed 2 functions are still functional. You go and develop updated software. So the whole world is working in this scenario now in the software development. So there is enormous amount of software testing is required. So if you do not do automation, no way this can be tested. So it will not be wrong if I say the whole world is moving towards automated software testing today. Nobody is using manual testing. Even if somebody is using, it is very, very minimal. So you need to write a test case. There's something called as a test case. Like for example, what is the meaning of test case is, let us say you have to a room, you have built a new light. So there is a lamp that you fixed. There is a wire that you connected to 230 volts through a switch, a series switch. So when you turn on the switch, the light glows. When you turn off the switch, light goes off. So this is a test case. The test case is turn on, see light is on, turn off, light is off. So test case is done. Like this, you can write the test case to check the functionality of the software. And then you should write all possible scenarios. What do you mean by this? Again, take the example of light switch. Let us say, please understand this very carefully. This is the essence of software testing. Let us say there is one light bulb you installed in the room. So there is one wire connected to one set of wire, phase and neutral, connected to a switch. And when you turn on, it turns on. When you turn off, it turns off. Now, you want to connect another bulb in a second room by taking same 230 volts line from this. Let's say you have connected second bulb. Now, and there is a switch for that. There is a separate switch for that. You have to test both to make sure that first bulb is still working, second bulb is also working. If you turn on the first bulb, imagine second bulb goes fat, then something is wrong. Somewhere wiring is wrong. Similarly, in software, you have to make sure that you have to write all possible test cases that the previous case is also working, current case is also working. There will be thousands of such scenarios, and each time you keep adding the software more and more functions, manual testing becomes almost impossible, and there is a very chance that you will forget testing particular case. That is why people go for automated testing. When you go for automated testing, there is no question of forgetting because it's all automated and system takes care of testing all. And whenever you have repeated process and repeated functions that are tested automatically using this automated testing. Now, having seen the use cases, certain use cases, I'm sure you liked it. Now we will try to understand what is the definition of automation. In fact, I have come to almost fag end of my lecture. I will be spending very little time on formal definitions. You can anyway get it when you Google it. So the automation is application of technology to achieve outcome with minimum human intervention. Without human intervention, you want to do all the things by a machine is called as automation. Can someone mute? Could hear some loud horning, honking. Okay, thanks. So because there is a minimal human intervention, the quality of the product will be better. And automation can be applied to all fields of engineering, not just electronics, mechanical, civil. You take it, you apply it. So can anything be automated? That means, wait a minute, depends. We cannot say that everything can be automated. Depends upon the use case. So here I have listed two conditions.
Please mute. There is one person who has turned on his mic. Please mute.
Roy,
Please mute.
Prabhavati, somebody Prabhavati have to mute.
ಅಲ್ಲ ನನಗೆ the way face ನೀನು
Please
observe
mute.
ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಒಂದೆರಡು ಟೈಮ್
Prabhavati, yes.
Let me mute.
Yeah, you can mute, I think.
I have muted.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. So this is again one of the applications of automation. I can mute. Somebody playing a song in Bangalore, I can mute from Synology. So I have put down 2 points here. In fact, this is what I call it as the common sense of automation. So any process can be automatable if it meets at least these 2 conditions. First one, the process should be repeatable and reproducible. And you can represent the process with if then else condition. Then yes, it can be automated. For example, let's say I have designed one small calculator, so which has an addition, subtraction, multiplication, division circuit. I cannot say that 2 plus 2 equal to 4 only in the morning. Afternoons it won't work. Then it's not repeatable and reproducible. It's not repeatable. So I cannot automate such a system. And similarly, let us say I built one proto circuit for a calculator. And if I build 100 such circuits, all of them should function in same fashion, not similar fashion, same fashion. Then it is reproducible. So if a system is repeatable and reproducible, and the conditions of the process I can replace with if then else condition, then that can be automated. So what is quite common already used in industries, in especially electronic industry, there are 2 things that we always consider. One is called design for testability. Second is called design for manufacturability. Design for testability is to make sure that the system that you design is testable by a third person. See, for example, let us say you designed a mobile phone. Now you want to release it to market. So you will order to some manufacturing facility who will produce that in large number. And then the designer cannot go and test all the 1000 numbers, right? It will be tested by some operator there. So some operator should be able to test that if you give a testing procedure. So that if you implement that in the design, it is called design for testability. So any system that you design should be testable. Otherwise, that cannot be scaled, that cannot be going to the mass manufacturing. It has to be testable. So you have to make the provision in the system such a way that automatically you can test the device you can automatically test the product. If you incorporate such a technology in the design, then you have implemented design for testability. I will give you one example to understand what I'm saying. For example, you take a look at your laptop charger. Some laptop chargers have a nice blue color LED. For example, Dell has a LED, Dell charger. What does LED indicate there to us? Okay, power is on, 230 volts is on, 12 volts is on. So I'm getting 12 volts is being delivered to the laptop. So that tells me that the charger is functional. If the laptop is still not charging, then there is some problem in the laptop, not in the charger. But you take an example of the charger where the LED is not there. The laptop is not charging. You don't know whether it's a laptop problem or a charger problem. Then you have to go by process of elimination. First, check the laptop charger. Take a multimeter, connect 230 volts. First, check 230 volts is present or not. Then check on the other side of the charger whether the the DC voltage 12 volts is available or not. It takes so much of time and effort just to tell that the charger is functional. The whole thing can be replaced just by one LED. That means design for testability is incorporated in that. This is one such example. Similarly, you can have the possible test points, can have possible connectors which are only intended for testing the whole system. If you incorporate that right in the design stage, then we say DFT has been taken care. In fact, there are tools available today, EDA tools, which will test what is the test coverage? Meaning, if there are 100 nodes in your circuit, out of 100 nodes, how many nodes are testable? If all the 100 are testable, then the test coverage is 100%. Only 80 are testable, then test coverage is 80%. Always, we should design our system such a way that you maximize the test coverage. Ideal condition is 100%, but if not 100, at least 80%. Then other aspect is design for manufacturability. What is DFM? DFM is not our capability, the manufacturer's capability. Where I am going and giving this my product to manufacture. Again, to make you understand, let me give a very, very simple example. Let us say you want to stitch a very nice suit for male, or maybe a very nice lehenga for female. We know that not every tailor can stitch the lehenga or the suit. A small tailor shop nearby your house who is just doing some maintenance work, if you go and give him or her a suit or lehenga, what will he do? Imagine what he would stitch. He will not. So you should find a proper tailor who can actually design your designer wear the way that you want, and then go and give the raw material there, that is the cloth there. Then he or she will stitch it correctly. That is what is called as design for manufacturability. You have to design such a way that it is manufacturable at the location where you intend to get it manufactured. To apply that to our electronics industry, for example, if I have designed a printed circuit board with the 2 mm thickness tracks, if I go and give it to one manufacturer, he will say that I will not be able to manufacture or fabricate a PCB with 2 mm thickness. My capability is minimum is 8 mm. That means if you want to give your printed circuit board to that manufacturer, you have to make sure that the minimum track width that you maintain is 8 mils, not or 8 mm or 8 mils, whatever it is, but not 2 mils. So if you consider these in the design stage, then you have taken care of design for manufacturability. Now, similarly, in addition to DFT, DFM, we also have DFA. Make sure that design for automation is incorporated. That is, the process is repeatable and reproducible. Also, you can have if then else condition put into your design so that the entire testing can be automated, entire production line can be automated, functional test can be automated, system test can be automated, and then you can even automate the packaging. See, finally, sorry, some problem with my throat because I've been speaking over 1 hour. See, you always see that when you buy a brand new product, there will be tested OK sticker put on that. You know how it is actually printed? Tested OK is printed by a printer provided all the functional tests have passed in the previous station. Otherwise, it won't print that. That is also automated. So once there will be a barcode for every product. So if there are 4 test stations, let us say first one is optical test station to make sure that the components are properly connected. Second one is in-circuit test to make sure that the components are functional. Third one is a functional tester to make sure that the circuit is functional the way it is intended to be. So in each station, when you scan the barcode, a particular test is done, and you have a final stage where you are actually packaging and putting a sticker called tested OK. So when you scan the barcode in the final stage, the tested OK sticker will be printed if and only if the board has passed in all the previous 3 stations. That means components are okay, components are soldered properly, in-circuit test is functional. The functional test also it passed, it is intending to work the way it is supposed to be. Then tested okay, a sticker gets printed and it gets packed into the cartoon box. So like this, the whole thing can be automated by implementing design for automation. So in order to do this, what are the tools and technologies that we need to know? And you who are studying in engineering now are very, very fortunate because you are part of world innovation now. Lot of things are getting innovated and lot of things are getting automated now. And fortunately, all these tools and technologies are incorporated in your syllabus. So you have this EDA tools introduction. All of you have this FPGA CPLDs introduced in your lower semesters. And you will get exposed to the EDA tools such as Xilinx, Actel, Altera, whatever tools that your institute is using. Then another thing that you should incorporate in your institute if you already don't have is IEEE 1149.1 or JTAG tools. These JTAG tools provide you DFT and DFM. I would say that the teachers who are on this bridge to note this point, to make sure that you have at least one JTAG tool in your institute, in your lab, so that you can give exposure to students on what is the concept of DFT and DFM. And then use CI/CD tools in software development. And the last point here is mandatory for all students. I don't know whether you know your mother tongue or not. The Python should be your mother tongue if you want to be in automation field. Learn as many scripting languages as you can, but definitely Python. Earlier days, I used to write TCL/TK scripting, but TCL/TK is slowly fading away now. People are using Python, Corba, etc. Python is the most popular scripting language. And then, why are we even talking about automation today? As you know, today is a National Science Day. And then we wanted to make sure that you get enough inspired to do necessary innovative work for the betterment of the quality of life for people across the world. And you are so lucky that you are studying engineering in this 2021 era that most of the advanced tools and technologies are available to you at your fingertips in your institute. And the industry innovation today is happening because of you, because of your bright, innovative ideas, your zeal to do something new. That's why we are seeing so many innovations happening. You see so many people across the world who basically hail from different institutes in India are producing wonders today. So it is again, as you have seen, we are in a very bad situation of pandemic now. And what really helped us during this, it's a blessing in disguise. Because automation was already implemented, we could all work from home. We could do so many things remotely. Imagine if automation was not there. Perhaps many people would have lost their jobs. Many people would have could not have even attended the online classes like you do or like you did in pandemic time. And before I conclude, I just want to highlight to you that recently I have written a book co-authored with Sumit Arora. Sumit Arora was a senior vice president in Cisco, one of the industry pioneers in network. Along with him, I have co-authored this book, Design of Secure IoT Systems. Soon this will be released in different markets. And it's published by McBride. So I'm open for any questions and answers. Maybe 5 minutes we can spend on that.
Thank you, Gambhir Ramachandra. It was an excellent talk, a very good insight into design automation. Now I request the participants to ask any questions if required. Yeah, you can unmute and ask.
Sir has explained about Cisco Silicon One chip. So I want to know that is it currently used anywhere, like any devices or any kind of networking systems are already using it? Is it in deployment or is it still in development? The
It is
Cisco
in
One.
100% deployed.
Okay.
If
So
you
it's
actually Google for Cisco 8000,
okay.
Cisco 8000, that uses this Silicon One.
Okay. Okay.
Next question.
Sir,
Yeah, please go ahead.
sir, whatever you told, like during the first hour, like the relay circuit,
Mhm.
are those used in the other smart appliances like smart bulb and all?
Yeah, the smart bulb, everything basically uses a relay. Either it could be
So how they are implementing
mechanical relay.
those circuits in the small devices also? Can you explain that?
Yeah. The relays need not be electromechanical relay. There are solid state relays available, which is a very miniature. The relay size will be like 2 mm by 2 mm, literally. So if you take a smart bulb, in fact, all of the Cisco offices, entire world, they have smart bulbs. Once you enter into the room, the lights are on. If you leave the room, lights will go off automatically. So there is a proximity sensor which will detect the presence of a person and it turns on the light. And the moment person leaves, it turns off the light. That's how it saves the energy.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. Next question,
Thank you,
please.
sir.
Next question.
We'll just take
We
one
have-
final question and then we'll stop.
Yeah.
One final question. All right. Thanks
Okay.
very much. Appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Gambhir Ramachandra. I think even we had Dr. M.S. Bhatt here
Sir,
from NITK Surathkal. Sir, you are there, Dr. M.S. Bhatt? Okay. So, thank you.
Yes, I am there. Thank you.
Oh, sir.
It
Yes.
was nice,
Yeah. Just your
presentation
remarks
by,
from your colleague.
No, not colleague. Also, Dr. M.S. Bhatt is my guide.
Guide. Okay. Yes, sir. Go
Great
ahead, sir.
Ramachandra. Yeah, it was a nice presentation. Thank you so much for a lot of information on automation. I enjoyed your lecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much for these remarks. It means so much for us.
I didn't realize my guru is there on the call. I would have been careful.
Thank you so much. Now, anybody would like to ask Dr. Bharti, SH, any question from your side? I think madam is not there. Okay. Now I request Dr. Savita Sonali from formerly Vijayanagar Engineering College, now Rao Bahadur Mahabaleshwarappa College of Engineering. She is professor and head there. I request her to give vote of thanks, mainly because our speaker got his undergraduate degree from Gulbarga University from that particular college. Now I request Savita Sonali madam to give vote of thanks.
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir? Sure,
Yes, audible, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Myself, Dr. Savita, Vice Principal and Head Department of E&C, would like to propose vote of thanks for IEEE VTOL's event titled Automation in Electronics Engineering. I would like to thank tools, IEEE Bangalore section, Mangalore subsection, Reva University, RYPC Ballari for organizing this event. I would like to thank Resource Person Ramchandra Gambhir sir, and Technical Operations at Cisco Systems, San Jose, California, USA. Sir, we are very much thankful to you, and you are proud alumni of RYMEC E&C department. It's a great thing for all of us, sir. And also, sir has done post-graduation in industrial electronics from NITK Surathkal. So, sir is also a proud alumni of Surathkal, and I'm very happy to share that I have done my MTech from sir's batch only from NITK Surathkal. And I once again thank sir for giving an excellent talk on automation in electronics and engineering. Sir, and we are happy and we are very glad to see many patents from your end, and this will be an inspiration for all the today's participants. I thank Dr. Kumudini Ravindra, elect IEEE Education Society Bangalore chapter. I thank Bin ma'am, Vice Chair IEEE Education Society Bangalore chapter. I would like to thank Bharti S, Dr. Bharti S, Secretary IEEE Education Section Society Bangalore chapter, Dr. Narendra Babu, Treasurer IEEE Education Society Bangalore chapter, and moreover, I would like to thank Dr. Shiva Reddy sir, Professor E&C Department, Reva University, who is an alumni of RYMEC and ex-colleague of RYMEC. The main thing for today's event. Shiva Reddy sir, thank you so much. I also thank Pusparaj Shetty, Chairperson, and I would also thank Ashwini Malla ma'am, Chairperson IEEE Bangalore subsection, for organizing this IEEE VTool events. I thank all the NITK professors, Bhatt sir, Vittal sir, Vinuta madam, who all have taught us, and our professors, our gurus. Thank you all the professors, and I thank all the participants for their active participation. And lastly, I would like to thank each and everyone who has involved in organizing. Thank you so much.
I request all participants to turn on your video so that we can have a photo. I request all participants to turn on your video. Please turn on your video.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please turn on your videos. Yeah, Vishwanath, you can take a snapshot of this. Vishwanath? Vishwanath? Yeah, please. Yeah. I request all participants to turn on your video.
It is night 10:30 for me, Saturday night.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Vishwanath, when it is done, you can say yes, then we will log out. Yeah.
It will come, sir.
It takes about a minute or two, please.
Ravi Shankar is there. Yeah. I think it was a good event. We had 130 members participating in today's talk.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Closing the meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Ramachandra. Thank you.